Go.
Hi, I'm Kenny.
Hi, I'm Laurel.
Hi, I'm Dalton.
I'm Kendra.
And this is our English 200 presentation over Frederick Douglass.
Douglass was born around 1818 in the town of Easton, Maryland. We're not sure exactly when he was born because he was born into slavery. He died on February 20th, 95 in Anacosa, Washington, D.C. He didn't learn the alphabet until the age of 12 when he was sent to serve a family in Baltimore, Maryland. And after he learned the alphabet, he secretly taught himself how to read and write.
His slave owner's wife secretly taught him the alphabet because it was kind of frowned upon if they educated them and helped them out. And Douglass, after learning the alphabet, taught himself how to read and write and put words together.
He was really shocked with the treatment he got from the mistress because at that time he was really expecting harsh, bitter treatment from her. And for someone to be so warm and open to teach him the alphabet, it was really weird for the time period. He didn't really know how to take it.
This was when slavery was in full effect. Boom.
But Douglass continued on his secrecy because he knew the importance of a solid education.
Some of his most famous works, obviously the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. Obviously we read that. It kind of described how he grew up, how he learned, what hardships he faced, how the treatment from his owners kind of switched throughout his life, and his overall kind of his journey to becoming a free man. Once he was free, he wrote My Bondage and My Freedom and the Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. After he did all of his writings and everything, got his work out, told the world his story, he went on to create the North Star, an abolitionist newspaper that ended up being very successful and gaining a lot of followers. His career, obviously, he started out as a slave. Once he became free, he wrote the narrative from the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. After he wrote this piece, he had to leave America. He was afraid that he'd be caught and returned to his masters, because that's what they did to slaves. They were caught and punished if they were found running away. So he goes to the British Isles and begins speaking from his book that he wrote, and gains a lot of fame, and a lot of people begin to start supporting him. Once he starts getting his support, then he comes back to the U.S., feels a little safer now. He's able to start up the North Star newspaper and be very successful from there.
Okay, so there was no real argument throughout the text. Instead, he just kind of described his life story and talked about his treatment as a slave and the treatment that he took from his mistress. Okay, so Douglass's rhetoric, he wrote in what we would consider a formal writing style today, and he used chronological order and longer punctuated sentences. He was a commanding speaker, and he used a lot of emotion in his writing, and we could tell this when he would talk about the treatment that his family received from slavery, or how he just wanted to end his life.
Douglass's commanding voice when he was either giving a speech or writing is a very rare trait for most people, especially someone who came from such a struggling background and become educated as he did. When you're giving a speech to an audience, it's hard for them to connect, and he did a really good job of making people, it evoked a lot of emotions from people, and they felt connected to him when they were reading his works, his books, his newspaper later on, or even listening to his speeches as he toured the British Isles.
Okay, so back then, he was a very powerful speaker on the abolition of slavery. And then after he wrote his book, he even toured the British Isles to help build up support. When he returned, he gained great fame and admiration. Now we've kind of swept him under the rug just because we don't like to bring up previous feelings of hurt.
Just like with Martin Luther King during the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, slavery is a time in our past as a country we're not really proud of. We don't like to focus on it. When we teach it in school nowadays, we talk about the main abolitionists, what they did, a little bit of the hardships, and move on. We don't want to, it's like putting salt on a wound. There's so much hatred going on right now. Everybody's worried about racial equality, and with the news of the police brutality, it kind of makes it hard to talk about a subject like this because people lose their cool easily.
So after reading Douglass's text, we decided to research a little bit more into him, and out other things that he supported. We thought it was pretty interesting that he actually attended the famous Women's Rights Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, and he was a very strong supporter of women's rights, as he was for slave rights and everything during the Civil Rights Movement, because he was a slavery abolitionist as he started the North Star, and he wanted equality for all. He was actually nominated as the Vice President of the United States in 1872 after the Civil War, because he was a member of the Equal Rights Party, and during the Civil War, he actually was an advisor to President Lincoln twice, helping him in slavery and the Emancipation Proclamation. He had a big effect on that as well.
We look at this now and think, ooh, how did he get to where he was as an advisor to President Lincoln? But it's really not that odd. Lincoln was a strong advocate against slavery. Obviously, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation and was a big driver to getting that pushed through. So having another abolitionist at his side who was just as energetic and driven to get slavery ended as he is, really not that odd of a thing to see.
So overall, Douglass inspired many. Basically, everyone he came in contact with, he inspired. He was a slavery abolitionist that just wanted equal rights for everyone, and he was a very successful man to all that he encountered and everything he did.